Hey, Bill.
Hey, Andrew.
Thanks for being here. Everybody, I'm Andrew Dietz, Casey, and this is the Atlanta Soto Zen Center, ZENtalk. And ZENtalk is a podcast that we began earlier this year. Um, we're just us regular folk, I guess, can talk about, how our lives and activities intersect with Zen, how it's helped us, and yeah, just show everybody that we're not alone. There are people just like us. Um, I have with me tonight Bill Boling. Bill is a good longtime friend, and I'll share a little bit about Bill's background, but I'll let him go into detail. Bill is a Renaissance man, and he is a an attorney by profession, but also a fine artist. He is a fine art photographer and very active in the Atlanta community and beyond in fine art photography, and has his own art book publishing company. Show them your chest there. Fall Line Press. You probably can't see it, but it says Fall Line, which is Bill's fine art book publishing company. And I encourage you to find that online. What's the URL?
www.falllinepress.com.
Okay, falllinepress.com. Um, Bill he'll tell us about his Zen practice, but he studied, I guess, telephonically or
Yeah.
digitally with Charlotte Joko Beck, who is a well known Zen teacher. Um, Bill is also a farmer. In fact, my family once went out to visit Bill when my daughters were quite young, and they still call Bill Farmer Bill. Bill has 3 Cent Farm, which has gone through different names, but I think the price has gone up. It's now 3 cent,
Mhm.
and it's outside of Milledgeville, Georgia, in
Hancock County,
Hancock County.
about halfway between Milledgeville and Sparta.
Okay, right, which is the land of uh, Flannery O'Connor and other famed creatives in Georgia, and you're from there as well.
I was there for the last 10 years.
Okay, awesome.
Hancock County.
I'm in Millville,
Oh, okay.
in Baldwin.
Oh,
Yeah. So Bill is also a parent to to three, not more as far as we know, but three extremely creative children, filmmaker, an animator, and a printmaker. Um, and It's also a great son, and we'll talk about hopefully all of those things tonight. Bill, talk a little bit tell everybody about, do a better job than I did, I hope, about your background and how, let's start with how Zen kind of, give us the story about how you came to Zen,
right.
what that was like for you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you, Andrew, and I want to thank the Atlanta Soto Zen Center for doing this and for letting me be part of it. Um, I um, I came out of law school like I was shot out of a cannon in 1981. I had wanted to be and did study art, and law was not necessarily my first love, or it was a livelihood. I had at the time one child, and we eventually had two more. And I found myself in the early 90s having practiced law for 10 years and done very well with it, and had found that even though I didn't like law school, I loved practicing law. I'd begun my career as a prosecutor and did that for a couple of years, and found that trying cases in a courtroom in the South was really, I should be paying to get to do that. It was so interesting. And
Do you have to wear a seersucker suit and a bow
I
tie,
didn't have
the
to,
fans
I didn't
spinning,
have
and
to, but I could have.
mhm,
But by the time I got to the early 90s, my practice had evolved, and I was doing a lot of medical malpractice defense work, defending hospitals and doctors. And a lot of those cases are very serious. There are people that have been injured. Uh, uh, their claims can be very devastating. Your doctor client is just not used to being called on the carpet,
mhm,
wrongly or rightly. Um, it's very difficult for them. And it was a lot of pressure for me. And because I was doing well at it, I had a lot of cases. And by then I had 3 children and I had a mortgage and 2 dogs and a cat. And my life was very, very fraught. And I'd always been interested in psychology and personal growth and development. I was a fan of Eric Fromm and Carl Rogers, and I'd done a lot of reading in school and after school about, well, what's self-realization all about? How do I get there? Always questing, looking for a way of being more complete. And I stumbled on this book called Everyday Zen by, I'd already begun gravitating toward readings in Eastern philosophy. And I found this book by a woman named Charlotte Joko Beck. And I just read the cover and the back and a little bit. I said, this is great. And I just devoured it and put it aside and thought, well, I think I can do meditation practice, and started kind of doing it at home. And then she came out with another book maybe a year later, Nothing Special. And
That's the name of the book. That you're not commenting on the quality of the book.
No,
the name of the book was Nothing Special.
Yeah. And in the back of it, she gave her address in San Diego and her phone number. And I think it may have even said in the book, hey, if you want to check this out, give me a call. So I called her up, and to my surprise, got her on the phone, and we talked for a little bit. And she said, well, I have quite a few of my students are like you. They're on the other side of the country, and in some cases, the other side of the planet. And if you want to work with me, if you want to be my student, I'd love to work with you. And I said, well, that would be terrific. So.
And you were where at the time?
I was in Rome, Georgia.
Rome, Georgia. Not exactly a bastion of Buddhism.
No,
and
it's like everywhere now. You got yoga, you got pretty much anything you want anywhere you go. But at the time, no, it was a bastion of
baptism.
Pretty much. We had a synagogue, but basically Baptist. Yeah, yeah, a few Methodists, but. Yeah, so that was really, she was really my pathway into much.
And how did you work with her? What was that like?
Oh, it was fabulous. We'd call her once a week, and we would talk. It was pretty brief. It would be like having an interview with your Roshi here.
Dial-a-Dokusan.
That's what a little bit. It was, I had work or things to think about, koan-like exercises, and also other things to consider during the week before I would call. So when I would call, I was primed with things I discovered or questions that had arisen, and we would talk for 20 minutes, more or less, and she would listen and respond, and then I would take what I took and go for my next week. And after maybe a year of that, she said, well, I don't think we need to call every week anymore, do you? And I said, no, I think we're on a good path here. And then after maybe another year of calling occasionally, I had the opportunity to go out and visit with her at the Zen Center in San Diego, the Ordinary Mind. I don't think at the time she'd probably developed that idea. Now it's pretty well known and respected, the Ordinary Mind School of Zen. But I think it was just called the San Diego Zen Center on Felspar Road, I believe, or Felspar Street. And so we met and had some time together. But
Bill, did you have anybody that you practiced with in Rome, or was it you and your cushion alone?
It was me, and for many years, just a folded over pillow. I got pretty good at folding that pillow over so that it made my little cushion. And but I never had the opportunity to be in a sangha or sit in a group. And that was pretty okay. I did discover towards the end of the 90s, I guess maybe 98 or 99, as the internet was becoming alive, that we had in Atlanta, Soto Zen Center, and Roshi Elliston was a very young feller back then,
Mhm.
and I kept thinking, well, I need to get to Atlanta and check that out, but I never
Mhm.
did.
Mhm.
Uh,
Well, you first took a trip to Augusta and spent some years there.
I spent 5 years in Augusta
Yeah.
before coming to Atlanta in 2005. So,
Mhm. Talk a little bit about let's jump tracks for a minute and talk about your artwork and your photography,
mhm,
and then maybe bring the two tracks together. I'm curious
mhm,
how Zen has affected
mhm,
that and your work life as well. But
mhm,
talk a little bit about your art practice.
mhm. Well, when I guess it was a sophomore or junior, between my sophomore and junior year, I was a drawing and painting major, and I was fortunate to be able to go overseas and study in an école de beaux-arts in a part of France
Gesundheit.
where my wife was
Whoa,
living.
you went. You
Yeah,
wait. We
it's an
went.
école de beaux-arts.
The
It's
School of
a school of fine
Fine
arts.
Arts.
It's what the French call their art schools,
Mm-hmm.
and that was really interesting and fantastic. And I picked up a lot. I learned French, and I met this wonderful woman,
Mm-hmm.
Gaëlle, and we are. Thank you. Just don't take that one, maybe right on the end. We're still together today.
And make sure you offer some to our audience as well.
And so anyway, I when we came back from France and I sort of relaunched my art studies here, it didn't feel the same. I was now in a relationship, and that relationship was moving toward marriage and moving towards a family. And my experience with drawing and painting was very much I'm wild and loose on the universe, and I don't need to make a living. And
Mm-hmm.
suddenly I felt all of the aspects of my upbringing that, well, man, you're going to be, a father figure, and you're going to be the breadwinner, and you're going to, and I was pretty good with drawing and painting, but I didn't see a pathway to having a family with that. For me, others do and have. And so I shifted gears, and it was a big regret for me. I said, man, I don't know what I'm doing, and why am I doing this? But I put it down for a long time, for 6, 7 years. I just put art to the side, but it just kept creeping back in. And finally, the way I got back in was with an art gallery here in Atlanta, the Jackson Fine Art Gallery, which is still today one of the great photography-based galleries in the country.
I think so. Yeah.
And uh, I saw an exhibition there, and I realized that I could do this, and I wanted to do it. So I bought I bought a Leica rangefinder, and it's a small camera, and you can put it in your pocket. And I started taking it everywhere I went, and that's how I began to weave art back into my life. And interestingly, it was happening at about the same time that I had discovered my Zen practice.
So the camera was a convenient way for you to step back into it and use your eye.
Yeah,
your trained eye.
yeah. It was when you do a drawing or painting, the engagement with it seems to go over a much longer period of time, whereas a photograph might occur to you at any moment. So in some ways, a photograph is akin to a poem in a way. Two of my favorite poets, um, uh, 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 William Carlos Williams. Um, I'll pick on him. He was an obstetrician, and he would write his poems would come to him. I guess the poor laboring moms had to wait for him to get it out. But he wrote many of his poems on the back of a prescription pad, just as they come to you. And photographs are similar that way. They just sort of come to you, stumbling in out of the darkness.
Wow. Which is has a very Zen element to it, doesn't it? It's a spontaneity.
Photography and Zen have a lot in common, and poetry.
Yeah. So you and I have known each other for a number of years, and I knew you studied art, but I don't think I've ever asked you about your drawing or painting. Is that something that you've ever gotten back to?
Yeah, I draw some, uh, and I draw some, but I
Mhm.
don't. I haven't done it. I don't
Mhm.
consider it. I consider it part of my art practice, but I don't.
Mhm.
I'm not really right now.
Mhm.
I'm open to it coming back and being a bigger part of how I pictures that I make and share. But right now, it's mainly sketching and
Mhm.
playing around, which most art is playing around. But when you get to a certain level, you're playing around is playing around in a way that you want to share with people,
Mhm.
in a way that in some way represents.
Just a bell of mindfulness, borrowed from the Thich Nhat Hanh tradition,
Oh, cool. That's great.
is to remind us that
Yeah.
while I'm thinking of my next important thing to say and not listening to you, I
Well,
could stop for a minute and actually be here.
it's really cool. That's a really good thing to do. And it reminds me of my favorite show, Groucho Marx, when the duck would come down,
Yeah.
you'd suddenly everything would stop and you'd have to.
Groucho was a Zen master.
Well, absolutely was. Yeah.
The
Totally.
duck was the bell. Who
Totally.
knew?
Totally.
Um, well, anyway, I don't know if you've if this is something you've reflected on in the past, but certainly at Atlanta Soto Zen Center, given Elliston Roshi's artistic background and not just background but present, and so many of our practitioners are involved in the arts in some way,
Mm-hmm.
um, music and writing and you know fine art and so on. It's a subject we think a lot about, and I wonder if to the degree to which you can articulate, again, what Zen may have meant to your art,
Mm-hmm.
to your photography, and the degree to which it impacts it now. And it might not. I know you've been engaged in a number of other practices,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm just
Mm-hmm.
curious for
Oh,
how you view it.
I would say it's wildly influential in how I approach my artistic practice. And I think just having a serious, engaged, playful artistic practice really takes you almost inevitably into many of the streams that are part of the Zen um, path. And, it's difficult to imagine. There are, I'm sure, some uh, Zen masters that don't have an artistic element to their practice, but I don't think there are many.
Hmm.
I mean, calligraphy and
Hmm.
poetry, and
And,
it's always been the tea ceremony. I mean, it's just
mhm.
really almost impossible to think of a Zen practice that doesn't have an aesthetic a component to it.
It's you know, in some ways, it's an extension of sitting. We talk about zazen as practice. What
Hmm.
are we practicing for?
Hmm.
Walking meditation is a way to begin to
Hmm.
move the sitting,
Hmm.
practicing the
Hmm.
sitting to
Hmm.
to put it in motion in the world in a
Hmm.
very small way.
Hmm.
I think the arts are very much like that as
Hmm.
well. It's another
Hmm.
way to take it to the next step. Um, you're also a champion of artists,
Hmm.
and in some ways, that's being
Hmm.
a coach and a presence for others to help
Hmm.
shepherd them.
Hmm.
You just talk a little bit about that and your
Hmm.
experience with Fall Line.
Hmm. Well, my I don't want to make Rome, Georgia, sound like the because Rome is a wonderful place. It's almost 100,000 people in the metro area and two big hospitals and three universities, and it's just a wonderful place. But
Hmm.
it's a little bit off the beaten path a lot of for some cultural resources. It has its own symphony orchestra,
Hmm.
um, but my access to photography when I really engaged, like my access to Zen, was largely through books. And so I started collecting photo books,
Mm.
and I became increasingly, I guess you'd say, I don't know if I was sophisticated, but increasingly hungry acquirer of these photo books because that's how I would get into a particular way of seeing different artists seeing different things over a long period of time.
So a photo book would be a collection of photographs of an artist, their body of work.
Yeah, monograph. Often they're monographs, and the photo book goes back really to the invention of photography in the 1840s. So William Fox Talbot did a book called The Pencil of Nature, which was really just a compendium of photographs that he had taken around his place. But photographs lend themselves to being archived and put together, and so they really lend themselves to books. And in the 60s and 70s, there was an explosion of new ways of presenting photography in books. And a book is a particularly powerful vessel for lots of things, but for images, it's just uh, extremely powerful.
Why do you think? Why is that?
Well, I think it's a combination of compression. I think the codex form, which is the standard form book, takes information and compresses it. If it's a well-made book, well-considered book, the design will enhance the contents, and the contents have been carefully curated, carefully edited, and are carefully presented. When you have in your hand the heft and feel of a book, you know you're holding something that's almost magical because it will last. Odds are it will last longer than you. It may last longer than any of your descendants. We have books that have been around for centuries. And a really good book, if you do an edition of 1,000 of them, odds are hundreds of years from now, if the planet's still spinning, people are still collecting, somewhere that book will be there, and some either human or some other intelligent form will open that book and taste it and have an amazing experience. So books are magic. Period.
And your books are works of art in themselves. They're created, they're crafted, the bindings and the materials. But talk a little bit about your interaction with artists and.
Well, that's what really I was as I had after we moved to Atlanta. I was able to exhibit more. I had more community here once we moved to Atlanta, and after about 2, maybe 3 years, it was about 2008. I said, "Man, we've got all these great photographers. We should be putting their work out in books." And so I started the press, and we started. First book was a book of poetry. Mildred Greer, Moving, Gone Dancing.
And Mildred Greer is what, 95 years old now?
Mildred is probably 97 now.
And an amazing woman that lives in Helen, Georgia.
Yeah.
And Bill took me up there once to meet her, and maybe she was 92 at the time, and we went out for pizza, and she was as cool as anybody could be.
She's amazing. She's an amazing person. But then after that, we started doing more photo books, and we published some other poetry books, and we published all kind of books now. And it's a great joy to work with an artist and see that you can help them get their work out there. And many times these books will lift the artist's career. It will go along with exhibitions, and it just has a way of strengthening the artist's career and strengthening their vision, because it's hard to making a book means if you have 60 images in a book, that's probably 60 that's been edited from 600 that's in the project. And so you build muscles by strangling your little babies. I love you, but you must die. You cannot make it into the book.
Well, I encourage you guys to check out Fall Line Press. And Bill, you used to have a place where people could go and see the books. I mean, I guess.
Yeah, we still do. If you go to the website, just send an email and say, I'd like to come. And so we have a reading room.
If you're in Atlanta, I'd check it out. And it's off on the Beltline, at least right now.
Yeah.
Bill, before we come close to wrapping up, I want to make sure we talk about 3 Cent Farm.
Yeah.
And how that came about and what you're doing with it now.
Yeah. Well, my family and I bought the farm
It's only
10
3
years,
cents. It's a
10
good,
year, 10 years ago out in very, very rural East Central Georgia, very historic area. Alice Waters, Alice Walker,
Mhm.
Joel Chandler Harris, Gene Toomer,
Mhm.
James Longstreet, lots of writers. Flannery O'Connor's probably the most renowned,
Mhm.
but a lot of history. But it's a very poor county. I think third poorest of 159 counties. Is a very poor county,
Mm.
but beautiful people and a beautiful place. And this farm was started in the first structures were built in the 1820s, and so it's seen a lot
Mm.
of history. And um, and so we started doing workshops out there, and then we started having artists that I knew come do residencies there. And a
Mhm.
young architect, Pavan Iyer, came to our workshop, and uh, I shared with him that I'd been wanting to do something more substantial, maybe something like the Auburn University has something called the Rural
The Rural
Studio,
Studio, yeah.
which they've taken their young architect students to Hale County, Alabama, and have over a
Mhm.
period of 30 years really made a
Hmm.
big difference for the people that live there and for the community. So we have 6 students, 2 from Georgia Tech, 2 from Spelman, 1 from Kennesaw State, and 1 from Georgia College and State University. They're going to come for 6 weeks
Mhm.
and study a curriculum. It'll be led by Pavan Iyer, and they'll be interacting with the community. We're wanting for it to be more multidisciplinary, grounded in architecture, but there's 1 photographer and 2 filmmakers, and trying to begin to collect and archive and uh, energize and preserve the stories and the culture of the place, and let the students grow from their interaction with these really beautiful people in this
Mhm.
part of America. I think rural America now maybe 20% of the country lives in rural America, but it's not that well understood.
Mhm.
If people don't venture out there, or if they do venture out, it's just a craning their neck, or usually on an interstate, just blowing through it.
Mhm.
So yeah, so that's what 3 Cent Studio is what we're calling it. And
Excellent.
students have to apply, and they're
Mhm.
selected, and we're raising money to
Mhm.
pay for it. So send in your dimes and pennies and
Is there a
cents.
website for 3 Cent Farm? Or
There
how does
is
that
right
go?
now. It's just on Pavin's website. It's 8 Village / 3 Cent Studio.
8 Village? VIGHT.
VIGHTVILLAGE
Mhm.
/ 3 Cent Studio.
Mhm.
And we have got a number of uh, uh, docents and instructors who are committed to coming out and working on various projects and teaching and lecturing. But
Mhm.
if anybody has a special interest or would like to connect with it in ways in addition to or other than uh,
Well,
donations,
we'd like to do a Zen and creativity
absolutely,
workshop.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a given.
Yeah.
I've
Um,
called the sheriff. He will come and put you in handcuffs and drag you out there.
um, Bill, one, one benefit of Zen, not that we necessarily do it to achieve certain things, but one offshoot benefit
Hmm.
is it allows us to be a little bit more there,
Yeah.
more here and now with the people we care about.
Hmm.
Um, and you've recently told me one of the most moving stories I've heard uh, about your experience with your dad.
Hmm.
That I have to imagine in part your ability to do what you did, and still are doing,
Hmm.
comes from your ability to be, fully present with somebody.
Hmm.
Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, no,
It's
I'm happy. No,
such a wonderful
I,
thing. I want, I'd
yeah, I'm
like people
happy
to
to
know.
share about that. My father is 87, and he's dying of congestive heart failure, and that's a slow process. And he's fortunate. We're all fortunate as a family that while he has some altered mental status, which me too, but nothing like where my dad is. But he is a very Zen guy. He's in the moment. If you want to ask him what he had for breakfast, he won't remember,
Mhm.
but he'll be with you, and he's pretty deep in what he thinks in the moment. But he's dying, and he had a really bad downturn in February. And I have a busy law practice and a very full life. And I was just trying to wrap my head. He lives in Mobile, and I was trying to wrap my head. Well, what am I going to do? An associate who was supporting me in the law practice had just gotten a really great new position with a corporation. I was so happy for him, but I was trying to shift gears. How am I going to keep my client's business going? And I got the call that his partner and his people that were surrounding him down in Mobile were thinking that he needed to be moved to a hospice in a place outside the home. And I just said, well, let me come down there and see what's going on. And I went down, and then over the next 2 months, I spent most of the next 2 months with my dad. The
You just
first
sort of
week or
decided
so, I
on,
just pushed everything aside, and I opened a little office over in the corner of my bedroom where I could return my emails, and I called in a lot of favors, and I let my clients and friends know what was going on, and I didn't have anybody that wasn't completely supportive. And honestly, this is going to sound like a bold statement, but my dad, I didn't think he would make it to his 87th birthday in March,
Mm.
but he not only made it, he's turned around and is doing much, much better. Still dying, still hospicing at home,
mm,
uh, but the quality of his life, everyone became comfortable with him that we can do this, we can keep him here. And we went from having sitters 24/7 with him for several weeks to now he just has someone that comes in to support his partner for 6 hours a day, and the hospice nurse checks in every day. And and I, but beyond just being able to be available for him, uh, I realized that over time as adults, we had, even though I love my father, I had I had lost the edge of my love, and I'd lost love in depth. And as I say that, my mantra now is I'm the who I am is the possibility of love in action, down to the bone and into the marrow. Because for much of my life, and I've been satisfied with good love, But in the case of with my dad, I was able to reconnect to a level of love that was what I knew when I was a boy, and he would carry me on his shoulders, and I could be with him, and I could be with him in a place where it was difficult to see him fading and possibly not being with me the next morning. And I'm so grateful that I was able to do that. And uh, for people of my generation, many of us have either lost, or I know you lost your father just a few years ago. We are learning what death is and learning to be present with it. And that's what I was able to do. And I think Zen helped with that.
there's a wonderful photo. If you find Bill on Instagram, are you at Bill Boling or
I think I'm W Boling.
W Boling?
Boling. Yeah.
Go to Bill's Instagram page, at W Boling, um, and find the picture of Bill with his dad snuggled up, and that will tell you the story. Um, and I think it's something to aspire to with those that you love, that kind of connection. Um, and, sort of miraculously gave your dad, and hopefully continues to give him
If
more life.
If it's another day, that's wonderful. If
Yeah.
it's another month, even better.
Well, Bill, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Yeah.
I value your friendship very, very deeply, and I'm glad to share that with my sangha, my friends. This has been Zen Talk from the Atlanta Soto Zen Center, streaming live on Facebook at ascc.org. And we have programs here regularly, Sunday mornings from 9 to noon, Monday book clubs. We have Tuesday digital Dharma. We have Wednesday newcomers. and of course, Thursday ZENtalk, as well as retreats. We encourage you to come visit us, aszc.org. Hopefully, we'll see you next Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you.